Chapter 8. It's a cloudless winter's day. Bonding with Wendell and knowing his fists were wilting was one thing, but getting to see Olive again was another. And if they win the game this afternoon against Charles College, it will be a day to remember. The bus heads out of the suburbs towards the city. There are a few placards about. Nationfront has a presence already. Skinheads mull around the steps of Main Street Station. The bus moves on, and they reach the York Street stop, where two students wait, neither of whom is Olive. More and more protesters and counter-protesters chant as they file towards the city. The kids on the bus press their noses against the windows for a better look. "Whoa! Check that one out!" Little Matt Lee says, pointing at a skinhead with a German eagle and swastika tattooed on the side of his head. The man turns and faces the bus. Although his eyes are hidden by his black wraparound sunglasses, it is clear there are hard eyes shooting a cold stare at them. Matt jumps away from the window and rushes to the other side of the bus. The man grins and motions a throat slit. Jett's gut betrays him. For the first time since the events of the Gap, it feels like his stomach is a bottomless pit of quicksand tumbling into an abyss. He whips out his phone and fires off a text. He taps his feet as he waits for a reply. Nothing comes. So he goes to the Raven On blog. Right there on the landing page is a headline that takes his stomach to new depths. Neo-Nazi rally must be stopped. His eyes scan the page as he scrolls up his phone. Not only is she going to counter-protest, she's planning on documenting and doxing everyone there with their photos on her blog. This is not going to end well, he figures. End of the line, bro. Jett looks up and realises that the bus has pulled up at Flexington South High School. His brother motions for him to hurry up. He throws his backpack over his shoulder and gets off the bus. But his feet are stuck to the spot. "What are you waiting for?" Bruce says. "I don't feel well," Jett says. Bruce shrugs. Pre-game nerves. Just sleep it off in the sick bay and put on some headphones. Take your mind off the game for a bit. "I think I need to go home." "You kidding me?" "No. They need you out there." "I know. Mum's not going to be happy if she has to pick you up. I'll get home on my own." "You want me to tell your coach?" "No." You don't reckon he'll notice his 5/8 missing?" "Kickoff's 2:30. I might make it back. You know, I might feel better by the afternoon." "You can't just leave the team hanging like that." "Then I'll play. I'll make it back. Promise," Jett says, rubbing his abdomen. Bruce edges close, within whisper range. "Do you need to take a dump? I know a good toilet behind the science labs. Always clean." "No." "All right. See you at the game then." They fist bump before Jett scurries away. Bruce shakes his head. "Diarrhea for sure," he thinks to himself. Jett runs. Not the pseudo-run that most commuters do when they're cutting it fine for public transport, attempting to maintain some dignity by keeping their arms by their side. He sprints at full charge, as if he's running down the opposition to pull off a try-saving tackle. His arms swing freely and functionally. About 500 metres from the school bus bay is a public bus stop. The 139 goes straight to the city. Crap, he realises. He needs his helmet. That's half an hour on public transport. Then another half back to the city. The bus ride feels like an age, and he can't distinguish between anxiety and travel sickness. Finally, he's at his stop. He storms through the back door and thunders up the stairs, grabs his helmet and black tights, and shoves them into his bag. Then he rushes back downstairs. "Jett," his mum says. She walks into the kitchen. Her makeup is done and she seems nervous. "What are you doing home?" "I forgot something." "Do you have it?" "Yes." "Then get back to school." "Okay. Bye, Mum." "Bye, Jett." He runs out through the front door this time, surprised that his mum didn't have any further questions for him. As he rushes down the street, He's almost hit by a car pulling into his cul-de-sac. The driver winds down his window. "Watch it, kid!" Jett puts up his hands to apologise and takes off. He takes a quick backward glance and notices the car go into his driveway. That's strange, he thinks to himself. He gets onto Fulham Road and sees the 136 indicate and pull away from the bus stop. Jett finds another gear and runs as fast as he can, waving his arms in the air, hoping to flag down the bus. The brake lights glow red and Jett breathes a little easier. He jumps on board. "Thank you," he says breathlessly to the bus driver. He taps his student card onto the RFID reader. He is about to move down the aisle when the driver latches onto his arm. "See how it says not to stand there? Well, stand there and don't move," she says. Jett furrows his brow in confusion. Then he turns and looks down the aisle. One side is full of skinheads, all staring at him. The other side is a ragtag bunch of misfits, multicoloured hair, dreadlocks, facial piercings, gothic makeup, and a strong whiff of essential oils. It doesn't take an empath to feel the tension on board. Jett can't believe it hasn't blown up already. He faces the windscreen and doesn't look back. "Thank you," he says to the bus driver as she pulls away. "You're welcome. You're not going to the city, are you?" she asks, barely above a whisper. "I am. Stay away from Main Street." "I can't believe the bus is so quiet," Jett says. The driver smirks. "I renamed my pocket Wi-Fi." Jett holds onto the metal bar next to the driver's booth with one hand and pulls out his phone with the other and checks out the available networks. He smiles, as one of them is named Federal_Field Agent, #4721. Jett keeps his attention on his phone. Raven On is updating a live Twitter feed, and Jett scrolls through the events of the past hour. She's prolific. There's a stream of updates already. According to her, Main Street is packed. Each side is kept in place by a line of uniformed officers, one man deep. They were expecting barricades and riot police, but the ones carrying the shields are used as security for the businesses that line the street. The bus pulls into the CBD, and the driver nods at Jett to take off, while she keeps her eyes on the rearview mirror. He taps his travel card and gets off the bus. He turns back and watches as the protesters and counter-protesters, although he doesn't know which side would be considered what, get off the bus. Not a word is said between the two groups, and hardly a look is exchanged. They break off into separate groups and go in opposite directions. Jett runs into an alleyway. He drops onto one knee and takes off his backpack and unzips it. He slips off his school polo net shirt and swaps it for his black rashie. He shoves his helmet onto his head and clips it in place. Then he takes off his shoes, looks around to check that he is alone, and when he is satisfied that he is, whips off his pants. He squeezes into his black compression tights, then jumps into his white sneakers. Finally, he hides his backpack behind a skip bin. The worst thing about the helmet is the muffling of sound. Chants are building and reverberating through the streets, but their intensity is dampened. Jett wanders onto Main Street, right in the middle of the two sides. Now he feels it. They're about 50 metres apart from each other, and the looks are menacing. A line of black-clad riot cops stands in front of him, keeping the protesters away from the shop fronts and deterring anyone else from joining in on the action from the sides, thus forcing the numbers to swell from the back. As described by Raven, the demilitarised zone is maintained by a line of cops, each one policing each side. Each mass is pressed up against their respective cordon, shouting taunts. Without his helmet, it would be deafening. It's like being caught in the midst of a real-life message board. The vile posts are made corporeal by the warriors who have swapped their keyboards for placards. The shouting thickens the air. Insults pile on threats, which stack on chants that ride on a wave of shaken fists. Veins pop on necks, and eyes are as sharp as knives. This is ugly, Jett thinks to himself. This is what he, Emily, and Olive can feel. The undercurrent of tension that flows through the city like Roland's River. At the front line of the neo-Nazis is a mountain of a skinhead who towers over the cops. He's having the time of his life. He smirks and beckons the anti-fascists to come closer, who blow kisses in return. Jett scans the first row of anti-fascists. and after looking up and down 5 times, he spots Olive. She is down on one knee, snapping photos with her phone. He's relieved that she's safe. Then she is knocked over by one of the counter-protesters and breaks her fall with her hand. But she looks inspired, as if a great idea has possessed her. As she regains her balance, she squeezes between 2 cops and scurries into open space. She starts filming, but her incursion into the void spurs on the huge skinhead. His smirk disappears and his face reddens. He points at Olive, stabbing his right index finger, as if to accuse her of some injustice. She doesn't move, and the police don't break the line to remove her, which enrages him even more. The skinhead parts the cops like a diva through a wardrobe, and steams towards Olive. She keeps her phone camera pointed at him, and holds her ground. He snarls and rips his white t-shirt over his head, and slams it into the bitumen. Olive holds her position, keeping her eyes on the journalistic prize. The gap between them is down to 20 metres, then 10. Jett takes a breath and latches onto the shoulders of 2 riot police who are facing the other way and launches himself over the top of them with one explosive muscle-up. He sprints towards the skinhead without checking to see if any of the cops have broken the line to pursue him. He's just one kid, just like Olive is one protester. So he doubts the cops will break their line just for him. "Hey!" Jett shouts as loudly as he can, lest his voice be eaten by his helmet. Both the skinhead and Olive turn. Jett slows his run to a composed walk. "Can we talk?" Jett asks. Jett extends a hand as he treads towards the giant skinhead. But there is no reciprocal hand. Rather, the man lifts his right leg and cocks it for a push kick. Jett jumps to his right and parries the kick with his left outer forearm. Jett needs to bridge the distance, but this guy is huge. Then again, he realises, he doesn't. "Run!" he shouts at Olive. That's why he's here after all. Not to fight, but to protect Olive. However, she refuses to back off and continues filming. The neo-Nazi tries to grab Jett's brashie, but Jett leans back and evades his grasp. Jett squares his stance and puts his hands up, with open palms facing out so that he is ready to defend himself without appearing a threat. Still, the man makes fists with his massive tattooed hands. His right hand is cocked near his chin, and his left is out way too far, telling Jett that this guy likes to throw heavy, which doesn't bother Jett, as he'll see the punches coming like a truck doing a 3-point turn. "I don't want to fight you," Jett pleads. "Then why are you running at me?" the skinhead says. "To protect her." "Then tell her to get back on her side." Then the skinhead whips his head to his right, back towards his fellow members. Something has caught his attention. Jett follows the man's eyes and turns his head too. Sprinting towards them, as if being chased by lions, is Wendell. "Don't hurt him," Wendell says. "Don't hurt him, Uncle Jimmy. Let's go back behind the line," he says, tugging the Hulk's right arm. "Oh, that's your uncle," Jett thinks to himself. He must have cut off the mullet, lest he not fit in. Jimmy glares at Wendell. "Whose side are you on?" "Please come back." "Whose side are you on?" Jimmy booms again. "You have to come back. You're on parole." "Where the hell do you stand, boy?" "I stand with my people." "Then quit bothering me and go stand with them." Wendell swallows. Then he turns and takes a step towards the neo-Nazis, before circling back around and planting himself beside Jett, who is as shocked as Jimmy. "What the hell are you doing?" Standing with my people." "Who the hell is this anyway?" He's my friend." "What about me? What about us? What about all I've done for you and your mother?" "I'm sorry, Uncle Jimmy." Jimmy gets right in Wendell's face and stands over the top of him. "Don't uncle me. Do you know what we do to race traitors? Do you know what we do to anyone who leaves?" I'm sorry, Uncle Jim. Wendell's lips tremble. Then a wet patch grows on his crotch, like blood, seeping from a wound. He knows. Nobody leaves. They either make themselves disappear, or someone else does. Jett watches on, then remembers that Olive is also watching on. He turns his head to her and sees that she has crept closer and is possibly live streaming. He jumps in front of the camera. You have to stop filming this, Jett says to Olive, as kindly as possible. She turns the camera onto Jett's concealed face, before cutting away to her left. She films Jimmy storming away, back towards the other protesters. Wendell stands in his own piss, crying and holding his cheek. Jett takes the few steps required to reach Wendell. He puts a hand on Wendell's shoulder, and Wendell turns and goes for a hug. Jett takes him in, and Wendell wails on Jett's shoulder, as Olive films them. She then turns her camera onto the Nazis, and films Jimmy disappear through the crowd in a huff, leaving them in confusion. The anti-fascist protesters are also subdued, with the front line silently watching Jett and Wendell. I have to go, Jett says to Wendell. Wendell nods. Thank you. Keep an eye on my locker, friend. Jett nods. I will. Wait. Who are you? Jett shrugs. Nobody. He glances at Olive, who has put the camera back on him. She looks at him with curiosity. You're welcome, he thinks to himself. He then takes off, back to the alleyway, and retrieves his bag. He slips off his helmet and runs his fingers through his flattened hair, roughing up the sweaty mess. He changes back into his school uniform behind the dumpster and then runs for the bus. Jett bursts into the change rooms, where his team is kitted up and about to go out to warm up. Phan, where have you been? His coach barks. Sorry, coach. I wasn't feeling great this morning. I'm better now, Jett replies. You missed chemistry, Parky, his partner in the halves, says. Who cares about chemistry? Coach says. Kickoff's in 10 minutes. Jett and Parky smile. Yes, coach, they say. Anything interesting in chemistry, Parky? Jett asks as he gets his boots on. Next week's quiz is on carbon. Oh yeah? What can you tell me about it? It comes from the Latin carbo, meaning coal. It's the sixth element on the periodic table, between boron and nitrogen, and it's the fourth most abundant element in the universe, after hydrogen, helium, and oxygen. I guess you're passing the quiz. Oh, I almost forgot. It bonds easily with other elements. Jett raises his eyebrows. Interesting. Boys, you're here to play footy, not to learn stuff, Coach says. Sorry, Coach, Jett says with a smirk. Coach Tuft is great. He always knew how to take the edge off the players' nerves. With the weight of the protest and the counter-protest off his shoulders, Jett is in flow. Some call it the zone, but Coach Tuft prefers flow, because it shows that the zone is not some static place, but a dynamic dance of mind and body, where thoughts do not tread on toes. There's no overthinking in this game. He reads the opposition like a street sign, and plays exactly what's in front of him. After a 42-0 victory and man of the match honours, Jett stands on the sideline, sinking down some electrolytes, as his brother takes the field. The first 15 has gone win-lose all season, and now Charles College could hand them back-to-back losses for the first time this year. As such, the team needs all the support they can get, so Principal Katz has let the whole school out early. Jett, still on a high from the wins of the day, cheers the loudest. His claps are aimed at his brother. Bruce got stocky genes. He also inherited mobility and is the most dynamic loosehead prop the school has seen. But his form has been down lately, and Jett wonders if this is the reason he's been seeing Emily Earthman. Then his phone buzzes his leg. There's a new post from Raven. He smiles to himself, anticipating the write-up she must have given the kind, masked stranger that saved her from a giant skinhead. He clicks on the alert, which opens his browser. His jaw drops. In black bold letters, The landing page reads, Nazi sympathiser in publicity stunt. What in the actual hell? Jett thinks to himself. He reads on. Judging by today's so-called protest for national sovereignty, Joseph Goebbels is alive and well. What started as your standard fare angry skinheads yelling racist and homophobic chants turned into a piece of propaganda never before seen. A black-clad coward wearing a helmet acted the hero, setting up a redemption story for a young neo-Nazi thug. At the time of my live streaming from the front line, I was confused. But after reading the comments on the YouTube stream, I realised I should have looked around for plants in the crowd, who I'm sure were filming this heart-touching moment. This stunt has allowed them to flip the script on Punch a Nazi Day. Do not fall for it. The far right is creeping further into mainstream life, and now they are trying to humanise their members. Mark my words, this was a stunt to set up a contrast between the skinheads and the more palatable racists. They will present the redeemed supremacist as an everyman who has legitimate concerns. Look at this perfectly reasonable person, they'll say. He's turned his back on hatred, but look, he does have some valid points. Do not fall for it. Jett swallows. It hits him hard. Then bang, the game ball smacks him square in the face, sending him staggering. The crowd around him oohs. He puts his hand up to his nose. Blood. He rushes to the change rooms and leans over the first sink and lets the blood run freely. His eyes are watering, and soon that turns into a full cry. Jett, are you okay? Did it hurt that bad? Parky says, having come in to check on his pivot. It's too late for Jett to hold back, and he just lets it out. Parky puts a hand on Jett's back. There's first aiders on the sideline. Do you want me to call one of them? Jett shakes his head. Then he grabs some paper towels. After grabbing his backpack from under the pile of under-14's bags, he scurries to the administration block and steams towards Emily's door and smashes his knuckles against it repeatedly. He breathes heavily as he waits for a response. He raps his knuckles against it again. She isn't there. You just missed her, a voice says from behind. Jett turns. It's an austere office lady, clearly annoyed by his knocking. Sorry, he says meekly, before slinking past her. He runs to the staff car park and sees her getting into her car. He rips open the passenger door, jumps in, and slides low, as to not be visible from the outside. Emily swallows but keeps her cool. Another student approaches. Emily throws a jacket over Jett. Miss Earthman, I really need to see you. I'm so sorry, Mads. I really have to go. That's what everyone says. I'll see you first thing Monday. Promise. They drive. Jett stays low. They get to a basement car park, where Emily drives to the half-empty bottom level and parks deep in the corner. Jett sits up in the passenger seat. Did you see what Olive said about me? Did you see what everyone else was saying about me? Yes. I follow her. Jett starts crying. I was trying to help. I was trying to do the right thing. And that's exactly what you did. Then why is the world hating on me? The world doesn't hate you. You saw the tweets. Have you met the internet? It hates everybody. Anyone who does anything will get called out for it. Because the internet. Don't let them get to you. Jett wipes away a tear with his forearm. How can I be a bad person for listening? And who gets to decide who I should listen to? When my dad started dating my mum, my Vietnamese grandparents didn't approve, but nobody calls them racist. I don't even know where to begin. You're only 12 years old. You needn't be caught up in politics. So that's what all this is, politics. Emily sighs. I don't even know. Raven wrote a whole post about drug addicts and how they're trauma victims and that they deserve compassion and treatment, not judgment and jail. Well, you've got to be pretty messed up to dedicate your whole life to being racist, don't you think? So who are we to say who deserves compassion and understanding? Nobody. We're all nobody. Then either we all get it or none of us should. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jett, and I wish the rest of the world would too. What hope is there? In my early practice, I worked with a family. The mother and father worked together, and their opposing points of view complemented rather than competed, creating a well-balanced household. But then the parents got divorced in the ugliest possible way. So now there were two camps who couldn't be any more different. Each parent had their own agenda, and it didn't involve what was best for the kids. They just wanted to win, where winning meant getting the kids to take their side. There were no rules, no inches given, and no trust. No one was talking because no one was listening. It was just yelling. Talking to the wrong aunt put the children offside with the father. Wearing a gift from the father angered the mother. They made friends with the enemies of the other, regardless of the cost to themselves. Their existence was purely to spite the other. Owning the other was more important than paying bills. The kids copped it. They were manipulated, gaslit, and didn't know what was left, right, forwards, or backwards. Eventually, they realised they couldn't trust their parents to tell the truth about anything. So how did you help the family? The parents weren't interested in healing, so I focused on the kids. I essentially had to parent-proof them. They had to relearn what reality was. From the ground up. Literally. Ground truth. So I experimented with a new program called Nature Connectedness. Their therapy was life itself. Planting seeds and watching them grow. Observing tides. Tracing the phases of the moon. Why? Jett asks. Nature possesses unarguable truths. It is objective, unbiased, without agenda. Thus, it was something they could trust. They could find true north without having to wade through false readings. Now, to begin with, none of their learning came from textbooks. It was all directly observed and verifiable. Knowledge was liberating and addictive, and soon they became so adept at the natural sciences that they were able to build a picture of what life looked like. Through this process, they became in touch with their own nature and knew what nourishes and what poisons, such as their parents. From there they found their worth and their place in this world, and it didn't matter what their parents said to them, as they could apply the principles that they learned through their connection with nature. Now, before they believe anything, they ask themselves, is it observable? Is it verifiable from different angles? Is it unbiased and without agenda? I don't even know what you're saying. I'm saying connection and critical thinking are the vaccines to all the ills of the world. Vaccines don't do much if only a few of us are getting the shots. I know. That's why the world needs people like you. I don't have the vaccine. Jett, compassion and empathy are the highest forms of critical thinking. There is more power in your heart than you can imagine. And there are more haters on the internet than you can count. Emily shrugs. Superman can stop any criminal, but not even he can stop criminality. But could you imagine him chucking it all in and moving back to Krypton? Krypton was destroyed. That's why he came to Earth. Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Could you really stop now? Jett drops his head. We locked eyes. That was the problem. He opens the door and hops out.